The airport was filled with people rushing every which way. The sound of conversations mixed with the rolling of suitcases and announcements over the loudspeaker. Among the crowd stood Olivia Carter. She was tall, confident, and calm. Her sharp eyes took in everything around her, like someone who was always alert and in control. Dressed in a navy blue blazer and slacks, she blended in perfectly with the other travelers. Just another passenger heading home. But Olivia was not just any traveler. What nobody around her knew was that she was a top FBI agent, one of the best in the field. She had spent years fighting crime, training agents, and making decisions most people couldn't imagine. Today, though, she was just Olivia, tired after weeks away on a tough assignment. If you're watching this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, so you don't miss stories like this that show real strength and courage. Olivia stepped up to the check-in counter with a calm smile, passport and boarding pass ready. The line moved fast, but just as she was about to go forward, a uniformed airport cop suddenly stepped in front of her. He was tall and broad, with an air of authority that he seemed to enjoy using. His name tag said Officer Mitchell. "Step aside," he said sharply, without even looking at her. Olivia frowned, but stepped back quietly. Mitchell looked down the line, letting a few passengers through before his eyes landed back on her. His stare was cold and full of dismissal, as if saying she didn't belong there. "What's the problem, officer?" Olivia asked, her voice steady. Mitchell crossed his arms with a smug look. "Routine security check. You need extra screening." Olivia had seen this before. She had been in law enforcement long enough to know when someone was using their power unfairly. She watched as Mitchell waved two white passengers through, both carrying as much luggage as she did, but no extra checks for them. It was a pattern she had faced many times before, a silent message that some people are treated differently no matter what they have done. She felt the frustration rise, but kept her cool. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had been unfairly targeted, and everyone who might be next. People nearby started to notice. The tension in the air was clear. Olivia could feel the eyes on her, and the sting of being pushed aside again. But she was not going to let this pass. "I've already been through security," she said firmly. "I'm just checking in." Mitchell scoffed. "I'm telling you to step aside, unless you have a problem following orders." Olivia took a deep breath. Years of training had taught her how to stay calm in moments like this, how to handle difficult people without losing control. But even the strongest have limits. "You're singling me out," she said quietly but clearly. Mitchell smirked. "I don't have to explain myself." That was his mistake. Without hesitation, Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. She opened it to reveal the golden badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The room changed in an instant. Mitchell's confident look disappeared. His face went pale as he looked between the badge and Olivia's steady gaze. People in line whispered and gasped. "Olivia Carter, FBI," she said firmly. "Would you like me to repeat my question, or shall we take this to your supervisor?" Mitchell's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His confidence was gone. He had thought she was just another passenger he could push around. Now he saw how wrong he was. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. The quiet judgment of the onlookers pressed down on him like a heavy weight. For the first time in his career, Mitchell felt powerless and exposed. "I was just following protocol," he stammered. "No, you weren't," Olivia replied. "You were following bias. Now you have to explain yourself to me and everyone watching." People around them nodded quietly, some whispering to each other in disbelief at the unfairness they had just witnessed. Mitchell swallowed hard and glanced nervously at the airline workers behind the counter. One young woman with short blonde hair gave him a look that said, "Well, what now?" The weight of judgment pressed down on him from every side. His authority was gone, replaced by embarrassment. He had made the mistake of picking the wrong woman to target. Before long, Mitchell's supervisor arrived. A man with graying hair listened carefully as Olivia told her story. He shook his head and told Mitchell to step aside. "Agent Carter, I sincerely apologize for this misconduct," the supervisor said. Olivia nodded but said nothing more. She had already made her point. As she took her boarding pass and walked to the gate, she felt the weight of many eyes on her, some full of respect, others full of guilt, and a few quietly ashamed. Mitchell had learned a tough lesson that day. Olivia walked away, knowing she had done more than stand up for herself. She had stood up for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly, everyone who had been made to feel small when they were anything but. As Olivia settled into her seat on the plane, she allowed herself a small smile. Some battles aren't won with force or weapons. Sometimes they're won with a badge, a strong voice, and the firm belief in your own worth. She looked out the window as the airport disappeared behind the clouds. In that moment, she felt proud, not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever stood against unfairness. Every step forward matters, and today she had taken one more step in the right direction. Officer Mitchell stood there with a smug look on his face, convinced that he was simply doing his job. But Olivia Carter knew better. She had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize when someone was using their position not to protect but to intimidate. As Mitchell waved through other passengers, both white, both carrying just as much luggage as she had, without a second glance or additional screening, the unspoken truth was clear. This was about bias, not security. Olivia's calm exterior barely betrayed the simmering frustration inside her. She had faced this too many times before. She had spent years fighting against this kind of unfair treatment, not just for herself, but for others who had been pushed aside because of who they were. Yet here she was again, standing in a long line of people who had been unfairly targeted. A few passengers nearby began to notice the tension. Some exchanged glances. Others whispered quietly among themselves. Olivia felt their eyes on her, some filled with empathy, others with silent condemnation of the officer's actions. She was not just a tired traveler. She was a woman who refused to be dismissed. "I've already been through security," Olivia said steadily, holding her head high. "I'm just here to check in." Mitchell's smirk deepened. "Step aside," he ordered sharply, "unless you want to cause a problem." Olivia took a slow breath, steadying herself. She had trained for moments like this, how to stay composed, how to de-escalate. But even the best had their limits. "You're singling me out, officer," she said clearly, her voice carrying quiet strength. "Why?" Mitchell shrugged dismissively. "I don't have to explain myself to you." That was his mistake. In one smooth motion, Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. She flipped it open, revealing the unmistakable gold badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The energy in the room shifted instantly. The smug expression on Mitchell's face vanished as his eyes flickered between the badge and Olivia's steady gaze. Murmurs grew louder. A few people gasped. "Olivia Carter, FBI," she said firmly. "Would you like me to repeat my question, or should we continue this conversation with your supervisor?" Mitchell's confidence crumbled. His mouth opened and closed, unable to form a reply. He had assumed she was just another passenger, someone he could push around without consequences. Now, faced with the truth, he realized how wrong he had been. The crowd's attention pressed down on him, their silent judgment palpable. For the first time in his career, Mitchell felt powerless. His authority, once so firmly held, slipped away like sand through his fingers. I was just following protocol," he stammered. "No, you weren't," Olivia said calmly. "You were following bias. And now you're going to explain yourself, to me and to everyone watching." The passengers nodded in agreement. Some whispered in disbelief, shaking their heads at how unfair the situation had been. Behind the counter, an airline employee, a young woman with short blonde hair, crossed her arms and gave Mitchell a pointed look. It was clear she expected him to answer for his actions. Mitchell swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the supervisor who had just arrived. The supervisor, a middle-aged man with graying hair, listened carefully as Olivia recounted what had happened. His expression was serious and unyielding. "Step aside," the supervisor ordered Mitchell. "I sincerely apologize, Agent Carter. This misconduct will not be tolerated." Olivia nodded but said nothing. Her point had been made. She picked up her boarding pass and walked toward the gate, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her, some admiring, others filled with guilt, and a few silently ashamed. That day, Mitchell learned a lesson, a hard and humiliating one. Olivia, on the other hand, walked away knowing she had done more than stand up for herself. She had stood up for everyone who had ever been unfairly treated, everyone who had been made to feel small when they were anything but. As Olivia took her seat on the plane, she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. Some battles weren't won with force or guns. Some were won with a badge, a voice, and the unshakable knowledge of one's worth. She glanced out the window as the airport faded beneath the clouds. The plane ascended steadily, and in that moment she felt a deep sense of pride, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever dared to stand against injustice. Every step forward mattered, and today she had taken one more. The scene at the airport was tense. Officer Mitchell sat in the small, dimly lit office, his face a mix of frustration and regret. The reality of what had happened was sinking in. He had misjudged Olivia Carter, and that mistake was now clear to everyone. His supervisor stood nearby, arms crossed, quietly listening as Mitchell tried to explain his actions. But words felt hollow, excuses even more so. This was no ordinary passenger. Olivia was someone with a powerful presence, a woman who knew exactly how to handle situations like this. And now Mitchell was facing the consequences of his bias. Meanwhile, Olivia moved through the airport with calm determination. The murmurs and glances followed her, but she held her head high. This was not just a personal victory. It was a stand against unfair treatment that so many endured in silence. She thought about the countless others who had been singled out unfairly, the invisible lines drawn by prejudice. Today she showed that no badge, no uniform, no assumption could define her worth. As she reached the gate, she noticed a few people approaching her. A woman in her 20s, clearly moved by what she had just witnessed, offered a small nod of respect. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've been treated like that before, and no one ever stood up for me." Olivia smiled softly. "You're never alone," she replied. "And standing up isn't just for the few, it's for all of us." The flight announcement interrupted their brief conversation, signaling Olivia's boarding time. As she walked down the jet bridge, she felt the weight of responsibility and hope. She wasn't just flying home, she was carrying a message. That respect must be demanded, and dignity cannot be denied. Back at the security checkpoint, the atmosphere had shifted. Other officers exchanged uneasy looks, and passengers whispered about the confrontation. It was clear that the incident had left an impact, stirring conversations about fairness and accountability. Mitchell, left alone in the office, stared at the badge Olivia had shown him. It gleamed not just as a symbol of authority, but as a reminder that power must be wielded wisely. His pride was bruised, but more importantly, his understanding of justice was challenged. He realized that enforcing rules wasn't enough. He needed to see beyond them, to recognize the humanity in every person he encountered. The supervisor stepped forward, his voice firm but fair. "Mitchell, this is a serious matter. We must address these concerns openly. Our duty is not only to keep the airport safe, but to ensure every passenger is treated with respect and fairness." Mitchell nodded, swallowing his pride. He knew this was a turning point. Meanwhile, Olivia settled into her seat on the plane, the hum of the engines filling the cabin. She glanced out the window as the city lights blurred beneath her. The sky stretched endlessly, a reminder that the fight against injustice was far from over, but every moment of courage brought change closer. As the plane lifted higher, Olivia reflected on her journey. It wasn't just about the miles traveled or the cases solved. It was about standing tall in the face of prejudice, refusing to be silenced, and inspiring others to do the same. She thought about the young woman at the gate, and the many others who might feel small in the world. If her story could give them strength, then every challenge she faced was worth it. In the quiet of the flight, Olivia made a promise to herself and to everyone watching her story unfold, to keep speaking out, to keep pushing for justice, and to never let anyone's worth be questioned. Back on the ground, the airport began to return to normal. But the ripple effect of that moment continued. Passengers and staff alike carried the memory of the encounter, a reminder that fairness matters, not just in laws and protocols, but in everyday actions. Officer Mitchell faced his own reckoning. He attended training sessions about bias and respect, listening with an open mind, learning to see beyond his own assumptions. It was a difficult process, but necessary. Change doesn't come easily, but it is possible when people are willing to grow. Olivia's story spread beyond the airport. It reached communities and offices, sparking conversations about how we treat one another. People shared their own experiences, building a collective voice against discrimination. And through it all, Olivia remained focused, not on retaliation or anger, but on progress. She knew the road ahead would have obstacles, but with every step, she helped pave the way for a more just and compassionate world. Her badge was more than metal. It was a symbol of the courage to face injustice head-on and to stand firm for what is right. This moment at the airport was just one chapter in a much larger story, one where dignity, respect, and fairness are the true measures of strength. The days following the airport incident unfolded with a strange mix of quiet and chaos. Olivia Carter returned to her daily routine, but nothing felt quite the same. The story of her confrontation with Officer Mitchell had spread through news outlets and social media, sparking intense debates about fairness, profiling, and respect in public spaces. Olivia found herself at the center of a conversation much larger than herself. Interviews came knocking on her door. Requests from advocacy groups and organizations dedicated to equality poured in. People wanted to hear her voice, to understand her perspective, and to be inspired by her courage. Yet beneath the public acclaim, Olivia wrestled with a profound sense of responsibility. She was no longer just a passenger or a professional. She was a symbol for many who faced prejudice silently every day. One afternoon, as she prepared for a panel discussion on civil rights and security procedures, Olivia sat quietly in her living room, reflecting on the events. The memories of that tense moment at the airport played vividly in her mind. The sharp words, the accusations, the overwhelming feeling of being judged unfairly, but also the strength she found deep inside herself to stand firm, to demand respect without losing composure. Her phone buzzed. A message from her younger sister, Maya, who had always admired Olivia's resilience. "You're my hero," Maya typed. "You make me believe that standing up matters. I wish I could be that strong." Olivia smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She knew that strength wasn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It was about pushing through those feelings to do what was right. She decided to write back. "You have that strength too. Sometimes it just takes a little push to find it." The panel discussion was held in a large auditorium filled with people from diverse backgrounds, activists, law enforcement officials, scholars, and everyday citizens. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, a collective yearning for change and understanding. When Olivia took the stage, the applause was both encouraging and humbling. She spoke candidly about her experience, weaving personal stories with broader social issues. She challenged the audience to look beyond appearances, to question their own biases, and to foster empathy in places where suspicion too often takes root. Her words resonated deeply. She emphasized that security and respect were not mutually exclusive. Rather, they must coexist. "True safety," she said, "comes when every person is treated with dignity, not when fear dictates our actions." After the discussion, Olivia found herself surrounded by people eager to share their stories. A security officer approached her quietly. "You made me rethink how I do my job," he confessed. "I want to do better." Those moments filled Olivia with hope. Change was possible, but it required openness and courage from all sides. As the weeks passed, Olivia's life shifted in unexpected ways. She was invited to collaborate on new training programs for airport security personnel, designed to reduce bias and improve communication. Her insights helped shape policies that encourage respect without compromising safety. At the same time, Olivia remained grounded by her personal relationships. Family dinners with Maya and their parents became cherished occasions where laughter and love replaced the heaviness of public scrutiny. She leaned on these connections, drawing strength from those who knew her best. One evening, while walking through a quiet park, Olivia reflected on how much she had grown. The airport incident had been a catalyst, not just for public conversation, but for her own journey toward deeper understanding and advocacy. She thought about the countless people who had reached out to her, those who had faced discrimination, those who had witnessed it, and those who wanted to be allies. The path ahead was long and complex, but together they could move toward a future where respect was the norm, not the exception. Just as she was lost in thought, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Officer Mitchell. "I want to apologize again," it read. "You've opened my eyes. Thank you for your strength." Olivia paused, considering the message. Forgiveness was a powerful act, and she believed in second chances. She replied simply, "Thank you for listening. Change is a journey we all share." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Olivia felt a quiet determination settle within her. Her story was no longer just about one moment at the airport. It was about the ongoing fight for fairness, respect, and justice for everyone. And she was ready to keep fighting, one step at a time,